Alrighty. I want to discuss what your response rates should look like, as well as the process that you're going to follow here. Um, so let's get started. Basically, what I've put together here is, I've already broken down the 3 rounds that we're going to have. We're going to have the mistakes round, we're going to have the warm up round, and we're going to have the ideal 15 round. And I want you to know what your metrics will be before you go and head on to the next stage, right? So don't go past month 1 if you haven't met this criteria. Don't, and what to focus in on round 1, and then don't move on to round 2 until you've hit those metrics. So in round 1, you're going to be obviously applying somewhere between 1 to 20 companies. What we're aiming for is at minimum 4 to 5 interviews resulting from those applications. If we get 4 or 5 interviews, that means that the resume works. And if you get more than that, great. If you don't, nowhere, it's actually a red flag, and we should talk. I'll put my contact info at the bottom. But out of the 4 or 5 interviews you get, ideally 1 to 3 should make it to round 2. If you're not getting any to round 2, then here are the red flags. Basically, first of all, the biggest red flag is if you're not landing any job interviews. Like, if you applied to 20 companies and you didn't get 1 or 2 interviews, that's a big red flag. That means that we have an issue with your resume. The second red flag, although not a big one, as big, but still a big red flag here, is if you do land interviews, but none of them make it past the first round, then you're not ready to go and chase more companies. You'll have to really follow the advice that I give in the next lessons on how to interview. But you also just need to practice and rehearse. So the key things to note about this round of companies that we apply to is that the goal of this round is actually to make mistakes. I intentionally called it the mistakes round for a reason. I want you to identify and learn from your mistakes. I want you to know immediately if you got a resume problem or an interviewing problem. And then once you are going through your interviews, I want you to be able to know where you're messing up and quickly realize, like, oh, I messed up that one. I messed up this one. I could have said this better. We're looking for signals. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for signals at this stage. Mistakes are highly encouraged. I want you to expose all of the flaws in your game. And with that said, don't be discouraged or surprised if you don't make it past the first round. It's not entirely worrisome if you don't at this stage. We're in the early phases, but just recognize that you do have to improve. And as mentioned before, if you're not getting any interviews, we have a resume problem. That's easily fixable. You can email me or DM me on Twitter, and I can try to help you out there by reviewing it and giving you feedback. Or you just maybe don't meet the basic requirements that we mentioned in Module 1. And, we know that missing those requirements just reduces the chances drastically. But again, I'm not here to gatekeep. I want you to go for it. But just recognize that that's going to be a big issue. And then as mentioned earlier, again, if you're landing interviews but you're not getting far, that's actually a good place to be. That just means you got to practice, and practice makes perfect. And I'll give you some interviewing tips in a future video. And lastly, I want to highlight this. I talk a lot about practice makes perfect, and I'm going to reiterate that throughout this module. But you should be writing down the top questions that you keep on getting repeatedly, and writing and rehearsing your responses, literally writing them. Like I pull up a Google Doc just like this, write down the top questions you're getting, and answer it fully as if you were answering it in real life. Trust me, it works. I don't know what it is. I was struggling with interviews, and then I started doing this. Oh my God, my game improved drastically. If now let's move on to what we should be looking for in month 2, the warm up round. At this point, you should be applying again to your second batch of 1 to 20 companies, getting roughly 4 to 5 interviews. The more you get, the better. But now what we're looking for is, out of those 4 or 5 interviews you get, 1 or 3 of those should make it into the mid to final stages. So at this point, you know, you should be advancing past just the second round. And some of you, I anticipate, will actually get far and almost and get to that offer stage where it's you have one last interview to nail or one last presentation, and then after that is the offer, and then you'll miss it by just a little bit. I expect that to happen. That's actually a good place to be, because that's going to motivate you to be even better. But at this stage, resume should no longer be an issue. You should 100% have your resume working and fixed. I'm going to be offering that service, a resume review, if you need it. But at this point, your only issue should be successful interviewing. Key things to know is that you should be having good sales conversations at this point, which is the second round, and they should be moving into the mid and final stages, as I mentioned earlier. That's usually some sort of panel interview, an assignment, or even executive interviews with like the directors and VPs. We should 100% know what we're going to be asked based on previous interviews and what we should have rehearsed as a response. So essentially at this point, really, because you've gone through a number of interviews at this point, all interviews are pretty much the same. You'll get the same questions over and over again. You should have those pretty much memorized. No question, almost no questions should be catching you off guard. So you should have those responses rehearsed and written down somewhere. And that leads me to my final point here. You should be writing your top questions and or exercise or assignments that you keep on getting, because again, they're going to be the same. So keep writing and rehearsing them. Don't get lazy with this process. This is crucial and a must do, because by the time you get into the next round, which is the ideal 15, you should be getting offers. At this point, you're going to be wanting offers. Trust me, you're not going to want to do another month of interviewing. This is the sweet spot. So you should be motivated, and I'm sure you are after knowing what you can make in this career path. I'm sure you're motivated to do your best. But basically, at the ideal 15 round, we're going for that last, the ideal 15, that last couple of companies that we want to really go for. These should be your top picks, the ones that you filled out in that spreadsheet, the job hunting spreadsheet that I shared before. You should have that filled out with your top 15 picks, your ideal 15. They should all be great companies that excite you, that you know have, that have a great product. Now is the time to apply for them and get your foot in the door and interview. And because you know how to interview at this point, you should be getting to those final stages and getting an offer letter. At this stage, you should feel feel pretty good about interviewing. You've gone through the trials and tribulations. Now you're good. And realistically, if you're not good, you should be working with me, chatting me up, or sending me a DM so we can set up some time to really like analyze your interviewing style. But you should be pretty good at this stage if you're going for your ideal 15 in month 3. Mid and final rounds vary a lot. You should be mindful of that. Every company does those final interviews a little bit differently. So it could be a panel interview. Some do a mock presentation. Some ask you to do a prospecting exercise. The point is, it varies. Either way, apply the same principles that we keep chatting about, which is rehearse, write down everything you get in terms of an assignment, and just keep practicing. DM me if you need help. Key thing to note is really, once you get to the ideal 15 round, that's really where I let you go. That's kind of where the course ends. If you made it this far in the journey, you've got it from here. You're competent enough and you learned everything you need to learn. So continue going, obviously, through the interview practice that I'm going to be posting, or the interview tips that I'm going to be giving after this in the future lessons to help you get to the final rounds. But if you made it to the ideal 15 round, man, you're in a great place. All I'll say is, do me a favor and leave me a testimonial. That'd be solid. Or share it with friends, or anytime you see someone on Twitter or LinkedIn or Reddit, you know, post about how they're struggling to find a job in tech sales, just link them over here. I mean, word of mouth is important to me. It's my preferred method of marketing. I'm not, a guru with 100 million followers or anything like that. I just wanted to post this to have an impact and, get this like spread like wildfire. So anyway, that's what you should expect out of the process. We've kind of gone through a lot. I'm going to go ahead and share some interview tips with you, obviously, in the next lessons. But I hope this helps map things out for you and understand exactly what to expect. Cheers.